If you don't have a system for what you spend and where, you will overspend on the wrong stuff, underspend on the right stuff, and overall just buy the wrong stuff. That's the trap that most new Airbnb hosts fall into. They think it's about finding cheap decor or getting deals when it's really about knowing what category every dollar belongs. In this video, I will show you the Airbnb setup cost hack that has saved me thousands, and the simple system I use to budget for setup, supplies, and decor and furnishing. When I launched my first Airbnb, I lumped every expense together. Furnishing, decor, utility, supplies. It was one big number. At the time, it seemed simple, but it actually completely wrecked my budget. So I started breaking down my budget into 3 buckets: setup, supplies, and decor. That's when I realized the problem wasn't how much I was spending. It was that I wasn't tracking which category my spending belonged into, or which parts were actually worth it. Once I did that, I could see exactly where I could save and where I needed to spend. And it's the reason I can launch Airbnbs without panicking about my budget. And that shift didn't just save me money, it changed how I buy everything. Right down to the paper towels. Now even my supplies follow a system. Let's start with setup costs, the expenses that everyone expects. This is where most hosts underestimate their budget. Here's a rule: set aside $3,000 before spending anything on furnishing and decor. This will cover legal fees, insurance, utility deposits, software, and contractors to help you unbox. For this very unit, I spent about $2,500 on setup. Basically, these are the hidden costs that you spend before you earn a dollar. They don't make your listing prettier, but without them, you can't even open your doors. It's like pouring a foundation before you build a house. It's expensive, invisible, but it's completely necessary. I remember sitting at my desk, paying bill after bill, and none of it made the space any prettier, which is what made it so frustrating, but it's what let me start. I also remember going back and forth with the insurance agency, endless forms, endless repetitive questions. It was really frustrating. And the setup phase can be a real time suck, which is why it's so important to be as efficient as possible, which I'll get into in the next section. And while setup costs aren't glamorous, skipping them guarantees headaches later. And it doesn't stop there, because the next category looks totally different, but it hits just the same: supplies. Supplies, the category that quietly drain your budget. Most new hosts don't realize how quickly guests will go through your consumable supplies like Kleenex, paper towels, toilet paper, or just how damaging it can be to your reviews if you don't provide enough and a guest runs out. This is why the next hack I'm going to share is to buy 1 year's worth of consumable supplies and keep 3 complete sets of linens for each bedroom and bathroom. Then layer in those small comforts that make it feel like home. Coffee filter, tea, spices, even a good wine opener, so that guests never feel like you cut corners. Trust me, this saves you time, money, and leads to 5-star reviews. And by the time I'd bought everything for this unit, from coffee filters to the last roll of paper towels, I had spent about $3,000. And I hadn't even touched furniture yet. Your supplies are what make a stay feel comfortable and inviting. They're the difference between a guest saying that this was nice versus I'll stay there again. And when you have backups of everything, coffee filters, paper towels, Kleenex, toilet paper, your place runs smoothly even when your guests surprise you by using up a lot of your supplies. To go back to the building of the house analogy, think of your supplies like the walls of the house. They're what actually turn an empty structure into a real home. And that's exactly what your guests are looking for. They booked an Airbnb because they wanted that lived-in comfort, not a hotel experience. But here's the thing, even with a checklist, I forget something every single time. So don't stress if your first setup isn't perfect. And guests will always surprise you. There might be supplies that you need that weren't on your checklist. For me, one of my very early guests mentioned street noise, and now every bedroom has a white noise machine and earplugs. Most hosts think that supplies are a one and done expense. They are not. This is one of those categories that keeps coming around. Set aside about 10% of your revenue to restock supplies and replace anything that's worn out. And pad your setup budget by 20% to account for any forgotten items. Now, while supplies keep you running, furniture and decor make your guests fall in love with the place. So let's get there next. Furniture and decor is the part that every host looks forward to because it's really fun to buy, and it takes the biggest part of the budget. And new hosts tend to go one of 2 ways. They go cheap and bargain hunt for everything, or they way overspend and buy everything new. Here's my rule. Spend where guests sit, sleep, and touch. Get a good sofa, mattresses, dining chair, rugs, and lighting, because these will do the heavy lifting on comfort as well as your photos. Everything else can be bought at a mid-range price. Now that doesn't mean you need to buy a very expensive sofa, mattress, rugs, and chairs, but you do need to buy sturdy. And your high traffic areas like your living room needs to be stocked with items that can survive the wear and tear. Think of this like props on a movie set. The frame that is on camera needs to look fantastic, but the stuff that's in the background doesn't need to cost very much. Those items can be a lot less expensive, but your sofa and bed, don't go cheap here. My first listing, I bought everything from Article, and it was gorgeous. Guests to this day remark how beautiful that listing is. But with my later listings, I blended new items with antique that were still great quality. But my bed and mattresses, those are from Amazon, and they look, feel, and wear fantastically. And even though with each subsequent unit I spent less, I get more rave reviews about the decor in my newer listings. In my first 2-bedroom, I spent about $25,000. In this 2-bedroom, I spent about half that. So the truth here is you want to spend on the right things and separate your budget into the 3 buckets of setup, supplies, and furnishing decor. It's not the expenses that hurt you, it's the inefficiency. Buying the wrong stuff, replacing it, or constantly running out. Cutting random corners is like trying to win a marathon while wearing a 25-pound vest. It's not gonna work. Having extras, while it may cost you a bit upfront, will save you down the end. Occasionally, a guest can ruin a set of sheets, and if you don't have a backup, you're going to be left scrambling. So that's why you've got to have systems for your supplies. And buy good quality stuff so that it lasts. Now that you know the setup cost hack, separate into 3 buckets and spend where it makes sense. Next, I'll show you how to price so those smart choices turn into profits. Thanks for watching. Bye.